Hello everyone, and welcome to Bright English Point. Today we will learn about a very important event in history, the attack on Hiroshima. We will explore what happened and why it still matters today. Let's start by taking a step back in time to see the world before the attack on Hiroshima. In the early 20th century, many countries were involved in a huge conflict called World War II. This war began in 1939 and lasted until 1945. It involved many nations fighting on different continents and changed the course of history forever. During World War II, the world saw the rise of two main groups. On one side were the Axis powers, including Germany, Japan, and Italy. On the other side were the Allied powers, which included countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union. The war was not just a battle between armies. It was a struggle for power, resources, and survival that affected millions of people around the globe. Japan, one of the Axis powers, had been expanding its territory in Asia long before the war reached its peak. The Japanese government and military were determined to grow their empire, and as a result, Japan invaded several nearby countries. This expansion brought Japan into conflict with other nations, creating a tense atmosphere in the region. The government believed in honor and sacrifice, and many Japanese citizens were ready to fight to protect their homeland, even if it meant enduring great hardships. Hiroshima was an important city in Japan even before the war began. It was a vibrant, bustling city known for its culture, history, and modern way of life. With busy markets, schools, and factories, Hiroshima was not only a center of daily life but also held strategic military importance because of its location. Its position made it a key target during the war, especially when military leaders were looking for ways to force a quick end to the conflict. By the mid-1940s, the devastation of war was visible everywhere. Many cities in both Europe and Asia had suffered heavy bombings, and countless people had lost their homes, families, and hope. The war had brought so much suffering that both sides were eager for a quick resolution. The United States, in particular, wanted to end the war as swiftly as possible. American leaders believed that by using a very powerful new weapon, they could force Japan to surrender, potentially saving many lives that might have been lost in a prolonged war. This new weapon was the atomic bomb, a device far more powerful than any bomb used before. The idea was that a single, devastating explosion could shock the enemy and bring about a speedy end to the conflict. In this atmosphere of urgency and desperation, every decision was made with the aim of stopping the war quickly, even if it meant using methods that the world had never seen before. Understanding this background is important because it shows that the attack on Hiroshima was not an isolated event. It was the result of years of tension, conflict, and hard choices made during a time when the world was at war. This context helps us understand the complexity of the decisions that were taken and reminds us that history is full of difficult moments where leaders had to choose between many challenging options. On the morning of August 6, 1945, the world was about to witness an event unlike any before it. An American airplane, later known as the Enola Gay, took off from its base with a very important mission. The airplane was carrying a powerful bomb called Little Boy, and its target was the bustling city of Hiroshima in Japan. The bomb Little Boy was not an ordinary bomb. It was an atomic bomb that used the energy released from splitting tiny atoms to create an explosion of extraordinary power. Scientists had worked for years to develop this technology, and when it was ready, Military leaders saw it as a way to bring a swift end to the ongoing war. They believed that using such a powerful weapon would force Japan to surrender quickly, thereby saving lives that might have been lost in a long conflict. As the Enola Gay approached Hiroshima, the atmosphere on board must have been tense and filled with uncertainty. Imagine looking down from high above and seeing a lively city with people going about their daily lives. Markets, homes, factories, and schools. The crew knew that the explosion would bring unimaginable destruction to that scene of normal life. At around 8:15 a.m. local time, the bomb was released from the plane. It began its free fall toward the city, set to explode at a carefully calculated altitude to maximize its devastating effects. When Little Boy detonated in the air above Hiroshima, the explosion was unlike anything anyone had experienced. In an instant, a brilliant flash of light burst forth, as bright as if 1,000 suns had lit up the sky. This blinding flash was followed by a massive shockwave that spread out in every direction. Buildings crumbled and were swept away by the sheer force of the blast. The energy released was so immense that it shattered windows, toppled walls, and sent debris flying far from the epicenter of the explosion. The explosion did not only cause immediate destruction, it also created a powerful firestorm. The intense heat ignited fires throughout the city, and within moments, vast areas were engulfed in flames. The shockwave combined with the rising heat to create a scene of overwhelming chaos. Streets turned into rivers of rubble, and structures that once sheltered families, schools, and businesses were reduced to ashes. In just a few seconds, the familiar cityscape of Hiroshima was transformed into a landscape of devastation. In the moments immediately following the blast, the effects were felt by everyone in the area. People caught in the open experienced the full force of the shockwave, while those inside buildings faced collapsing roofs and shattered glass. Many survivors described the experience as both surreal and terrifying. One moment, life was continuing as usual, and the next, everything was turned upside down. Hospitals and emergency services were quickly overwhelmed by the number of injured people, and the entire community was plunged into a state of shock and sorrow. Scientists and military experts later studied the explosion and its impact in great detail. They confirmed that the design of Little Boy had been intended to maximize the area of destruction. While some argue that this single, overwhelming display of power helped end the war sooner, it also opened up deep ethical debates about the use of such weapons. The attack demonstrated a new era of warfare, one where technology could cause massive destruction in a single moment. The day of the attack on Hiroshima remains one of the most significant and tragic events in modern history. It was a day marked by a sudden and catastrophic shift from everyday life to chaos and loss. The explosion not only altered the physical landscape of Hiroshima but also left a lasting impact on the global conscience, reminding us of the dangers inherent in powerful technologies. This event serves as a powerful reminder of the need for peace, careful decision-making, and the responsible use of scientific advancements. The attack on Hiroshima had immediate and devastating consequences for everyone in the city. When Little Boy exploded, it was not just the buildings that were destroyed, the entire way of life was shattered in an instant. Thousands of people lost their lives on the spot as the shockwave and intense heat took hold. Homes, schools, hospitals, and shops that had been part of everyday life were instantly reduced to rubble and ash. The scale of the destruction was so great that even structures that were built to be strong could not stand against the power of the explosion. The intense heat from the explosion was overwhelming. It created a firestorm that spread rapidly, setting entire neighborhoods ablaze. Many survivors later recalled how the heat felt like standing too close to a giant bonfire, with flames licking at everything in its path. The explosion was so powerful that it shattered windows and sent debris flying through the air, causing further injuries and damage. People caught outside had little chance of escape from the immediate effects, and those inside buildings often found themselves trapped as roofs and walls collapsed. Another aspect of the immediate impact was the effect of radiation. In the hours and days following the explosion, many who survived the initial blasts suffered from severe burns and radiation sickness. These symptoms made it difficult for survivors to care for themselves, and the hospitals quickly became overwhelmed with the number of patients in need of urgent care. The combination of physical injuries, burns, and the invisible damage caused by radiation created a humanitarian crisis that lasted long after the explosion itself. Witnesses described the scene as something out of a nightmare. An eerie silence following the initial roar of the blast, broken only by cries of pain and the crackling of fires. The shock of seeing one's city and community turn to ruins was overwhelming for those who survived, marking the beginning of a long period of grief and recovery. This immediate impact not only changed the physical landscape of Hiroshima but also left deep emotional scars on its people. After the attack on Hiroshima, the city and its people faced a long and difficult road to recovery. In the immediate aftermath, survivors found themselves amid ruins, struggling to secure food, water, and shelter. Hospitals were overwhelmed with the injured, and many people suffered not only from burns and physical injuries but also from the harmful effects of radiation. The physical destruction was matched by deep emotional pain, as families grieved for loved ones lost in an instant. In the years following the attack, Hiroshima began the slow process of rebuilding. The city was transformed from a scene of devastation into a symbol of resilience and hope. Reconstruction efforts focused not only on rebuilding homes and public buildings but also on restoring the community's spirit. People worked together to create a new Hiroshima, one that would stand as a powerful reminder of the past and a beacon for a more peaceful future. Today, Hiroshima is widely known as a city of peace. Monuments, memorials, and museums have been established to honor those who lost their lives and to educate people about the horrors of nuclear warfare. The Peace Memorial Park, in particular, is a place where visitors from around the world can reflect on the tragedy and learn important lessons about the value of life and the need for peace. Annual remembrance ceremonies are held on August 6th, inviting people to unite in a shared commitment to never repeat such a catastrophe. Hiroshima's legacy teaches us that even in the darkest moments, humanity can rise again. It reminds us that learning from history is essential to building a safer, more peaceful world for future generations. In conclusion, the story of Hiroshima is one that teaches us many lessons. This tragic event reminds us of the extreme power of human decisions and the lasting impact they can have on the world. The attack on Hiroshima not only changed a city forever but also reshaped the way nations view war and peace. It shows us that in moments of great conflict, the choices made can lead to both devastation and, eventually, the hope for renewal. At Bright English Point, we believe that learning about history in simple, Clear English helps us all understand the importance of peace and human connection. By remembering the events of Hiroshima, we can honor the lives lost and the suffering endured, while also taking a stand to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. The courage of the survivors and the resilience of the community remind us that even in the darkest times, there is always the possibility of rebuilding and healing. As we wrap up this video, think about how this history applies to our present and future. It encourages us to work together, cherish every moment of life, and strive for a world free of such horrors. Thank you for joining us on this journey of understanding. If you found this video meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us continue exploring important stories at Bright English Point.